We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
I mean, what's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stuff.
Am I going to get sued?
You go legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're live on YouTube, and it's time, man. It's time to preview the divisional round. Got my Brunel jersey, as I promised, too.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah, well done.
This is from 97 or so.
It looks it.
Does it?
Yeah.
It's been through it a little bit. It's not like, it's like the $40 version. I don't know, whatever they cost now. Not
Maybe
like
a lot more.
Not the full replica.
Yeah.
That you get, but whatever this was, $30, $40 back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
What's that now? 3,000?
Yeah, about that.
Oh, I should sell it.
Mm-hmm.
I would never sell my Mark Brunel jersey. Still just a 90s Jags fan, not necessarily these Jags. So yeah, we're going to preview all 4 games.
Yeah.
We're more efficient in previews than we are reviews.
Maybe. Hopes are high though for this week. Remember, this time a year ago, we had a spectacular round of the playoffs. Arguably the best weekend of football ever.
That was the whole weekend. It was
the 13-second game, Kansas City, Buffalo.
The Rams-Bucks, crazy back-and-forth game. Those 27-3 and eventually tied.
Joe Burrow and the Bengals winning despite getting sacked 9 times against Tennessee and the number 1 seed.
49ers-Cowboys was that weekend?
49ers-Green Bay.
49ers-Green Bay. Okay, that's right. That was a good game, too. I mean, that was 49ers win just because of blocked punt.
Four outstanding games. It really was. Genuinely one of the finest weekends of football we've ever seen.
There are some people who, thank you, Ben, Brunel jersey looking good, he tells me. There are some people who say this is the best weekend of football because you get the final 8 teams, you get 4 games. Like next week, it's the final 4, but you only have 2 games next week. It's our last Saturday of football, so it's a lot of fun. And let's get into it. So the schedule starts Saturday afternoon, Jacksonville Jaguars at the Kansas City Chiefs. First time these 2 teams have ever played in the playoffs as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just like last week, Jags and Chargers, first time playoff matchup. Mm-hmm. This is good. 8.5 point Kansas City are the favorites here by 8.5. It's even higher in other places. So obviously on paper, big difference between these 2 teams. I think the question for me is, how much do you look at the recent run by the Jags? Do you split their season into 2 and say this was second half Jags, which is a whole different Trevor Lawrence? And I know they started the season with some hype and some buzz, going 2-1 and a big win against the Chargers. But second half of the season, do you look at the Jags any differently? And maybe it's going to be a little bit more competitive against the number 1 seed Chiefs.
Yeah, I think you probably have to. Vegas with the lines this week. It's not exactly Vegas doesn't think it's going to stack up to last year. It's not predicting for razor thin, amazing games that are going to come down to the final play. It's predicting for 3 reasonably comfortable victories and 1, close enough. And this is the one to me that feels like it has the biggest potential to be a pretty lopsided game. I think you need Trevor Lawrence playing at the peak of his powers. Second half Trevor Lawrence from last week and also from the second half of the season for them just to hang in a shootout with Kansas City. No matter what happens, I find it difficult to find a way that this Jacksonville defense can slow down Kansas City overall. And if they can't, now you're asking a lot of Trevor Lawrence in that offense, which is playing pretty well, but still, you can see the lack of talent in certain areas during the games, right? And if that shows up, or if he's not able to have that kind of perfect game, man, it's hard to see them hanging with the Chiefs.
I'd be remiss if I didn't make some kind of comparison to the upstart Jags in the 96 Jaguars.
Yeah.
So the 96 Jaguars went into Buffalo in the wild card round as 8.5-point underdogs.
Okay.
Won the game 30-27 against Jim Kelly and the Bills. Then they go to Denver, week 2, divisional round, number 1 seed Broncos. This was Elway's year. This was their year to win the Super Bowl. They had it all set up.
Like every other year.
12.5-point underdogs. And the Jags win 30-27 again. So obviously, there's a chance for an upset here because it happened back in 96. Okay, sorry. But actual, real on-field stuff to talk about here. I thought that early in the game last week with the Chargers being so physical with Jags receivers and all that stuff, you're going to see that with Kansas City. No team plays, or like one team plays more press coverage maybe than the Chiefs.
Also, shouldn't that just be your default position in the playoffs? Like, they changed the way they officiate in the playoffs. Like, we don't want to, let's dial it back, right? Make them go the other way. Like, just start off every game assuming you can mug receivers until told otherwise by the amount of laundry on the field.
And the Chiefs in particular, we're going to see that. Like, no duo had more, no outside cornerback duo had more press coverage snaps than the Chiefs. Jalen Watson and L'Jarius Sneed are 1 and 2 in press coverage snaps. So I think the Jags have to have those middle of the field answers again, but right away, right? You can't be forcing it outside, to Marvin Jones or Zay Jones or whatever. If they're locked up, the Chiefs are aggressive. They'll mix it up with the blitz and the pass rush and all that stuff. But the Jags have to have those answers right away. It took them a little bit of time to adjust in the Chargers game. The other thing that's interesting, we always like to look at the last matchup, right? The last matchup was 27-17. Chiefs got up early, but there's always those games during the season where the Chiefs are the clear favorites, but they start to hand the game away a little bit, right? They had was there a surprise onside kick in there, or they fumbled an onside, they fumbled a kickoff, they were turning it over, just some stupid plays by the Chiefs that actually brought the Jags back into it. Now, back in Week 10, we thought the Jags were just some lowly 3-6 team, right? That was like, oh man, the Chiefs should roll. Turns out the Jags were an eventual playoff team that had turned it around right around that time of the season. So at the time, it was like, man, the Chiefs are handing a team a game. But regardless, it's the same thing. If the Chiefs beat themselves, right? If they beat themselves, that gives the Jags a chance in this game.
Yeah. No, I think it does. Like they did have a game plan that was a little bit different against Kansas City than most teams. Like, most teams have shown Kansas City the same kind of looks. Jacksonville hasn't necessarily, or didn't necessarily do that when they played them. They were more aggressive with the kind of too high looks that everybody showed them last year, that hasn't actually done it this year. Like, that's one of the curious things this season, is that what we expected to be the blueprint against Kansas City hasn't been. Last season, they struggled against these too high looks. This season, either they figured it out right away and everyone went, uh-oh, they solved it, do something else, or absent Tyreek Hill, teams immediately just decided before you even played the Chiefs, well, there's no reason to do that anymore because Tyreek Hill was what was driving that. But when they played, Jacksonville played a ton of those too high looks. So, I think their defense is going to show the Chiefs something different than they typically see on a weekly basis. But I think this offense is just too good not to have success against anything.
Other notes about that game, to your point, they didn't blitz Mahomes, which, again, is like historically a bad idea, right? I mean, that's where, when you talk about Mahomes, we both ranked him as the top quarterback remaining in the playoffs here. That is the same thing you always heard about Brady and Manning and Breeze and Rodgers. Like, you don't blitz the best quarterbacks, for various reasons, right? They can recognize it, they can react to it quickly enough, and they have answers, and they're accurate enough to get the ball where it needs to go. So usually you don't do that. Mahomes is that guy, right? The scheme itself does a really good job of having answers. Mahomes just has, people were complaining because when you guys were building the best quarterback, Mahomes didn't win anything, which is, again, it's like, doesn't matter. You could argue arm if you really wanted to because of the way he throws the ball. But regardless, if you guys had a category for just vision and feel and all that stuff, I think it's Mahomes by a mile, right? I mean, just all of that stuff. And that goes into blitz recognition and seeing the field, knowing where to go with the ball. And even you guys said, hey, if when Brady moves on or if you say he's too old or whatever, give Mahomes the decision-making title of he's the best decision maker, which is weird for a guy that throws back across his body and all that stuff. Yeah. But because he's so successful making those plays, you could say those are good decisions, right? He knows himself. He's got, to me, it's the spatial awareness that he has. So all that said, will the Jags change it up a little bit? The Jags had their worst pass rush grade of their season against the Chiefs. And I don't know, do they just trust Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen, Arden Key, to those guys to win some one-on-ones against a very good Chiefs offensive line?
But I think it's tied to what we were talking about before of them trying to play coverage and not blitzing and showing the too high stuff. And basically that means you're relying on those front four guys to get pressure. But I think you're almost in a world where you're saying we're probably not getting pressure either way. The more important thing is to flood coverages and just make him do it the hard way. Like, he'll probably do it, but I think it still is the right solution or the best thing you can do against Patrick Mahomes. Like, if you don't have an obvious trump card on defense, like Dallas's pass rush or some elite coverage on the back end, like if you don't have something where you can rely on them just winning, and you have to say, what is the game plan that should happen against Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes? It probably is to just make them earn it the longest route possible, like make them take a series of plays, and every time they score, make it cost 10, 15 plays. And okay, if they're going to do that, fine, but at least you're making them earn it, right? If you blitz them just to try and get pressure on Mahomes, he's going to carve it up anyway, and they're going to have the exact same result, only it's going to take them 2 plays.
And Mahomes did carve them up in the first game. It was one of his better games from a grading standpoint, 91.4 overall. It was better. It was a good statistical game, too, 26 of 35 for 331, 4 touchdowns, had a pick in there as well. But it was one of Mahomes' best games, and he spread the ball around. You know, the other thing that Mahomes did back in 2018 that I was most impressed with when he first started in the league, it wasn't the highlight reel plays. It was that he overall took what was there, right? And that was what was weird about last season is they didn't necessarily have those adjustments, right? The Chiefs offense has set such a high standard that when they hit this midseason lull, it was like, uh-oh, what's going on? Why are they not dominating? And it was because Mahomes got impatient for a while.
Yeah.
But he's back to playing a patient game, and it is a different offense, right? It is Jerick McKinnon, who's got, 8 receiving touchdowns in the last 7 or 8 games. It's Kadarius Toney a couple times a game. It is their speed and quicks along with Travis Kelce working the underneath stuff that is the foundation of this offense, right? And then, oh, by the way, if you get too lazy there, then we'll go over the top. But it's different from Tyreek Hill's going to stretch the field. Kelce's going to work the short and intermediate. We're going to play this, 3-man game basically. Mahomes is spreading the ball around, taking what's there, and it's been really difficult for teams to stop because it's not about stopping one person anymore, right? It's about stopping the entire offense, and Mahomes has just run it beautifully this year.
But I think the fact that at least that somewhere in the past there is evidence that Mahomes can get impatient and frustrated if you make him take the long route to scoring means that's your best starting point. Like, it might not work. It's entirely possible that the best quarterback in the NFL playing the best football of his career in the best offense in the NFL is going to hammer you no matter what you do. But I think it's at least the correct process and the correct starting point to work from, and then just hope you catch, a few breaks here and there.
So if the Jags stick with their 4-man rush, I think they need special games from their athletes. They've got really good athletes up front, and Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker and the guys we've mentioned, and those guys need to win. And I think when the Jags defenses look good, you generally point back at that front and say, well, they played a really good game. They played a very, very good game. The Jags linebackers, a little hit or miss this year, right? I know Foye Olakun gets a ton of credit for making a ton of tackles and very, say, Devin White-ish in that he makes tackles, he makes splash plays, he kind of shows up in a lot of games, but there's some ugly games in there too. He graded much better this year than he did last year. He was a good player overall for the Jags, but I think there's a lot of pressure on their linebackers. Maybe more than ever, right, as far as when you're playing the Chiefs. It's on those guys to play the run. They're going to run the ball a little bit, but also stop the underneath stuff.
And he's also the guy that gets everybody lined up in that defense. Like, outside of him, they've got rookie Devin Lloyd. He's splitting time with Chad Muma, fellow rookie. You can kind of see Olakun directing the traffic. Like, he's making sure everybody's in the right gap. He's making sure everybody's where they're supposed to be, that they've got their assignments down. almost before every single snap. So the dude is like, on the one hand, trying to figure out what he's doing and making his own plays. And on the other hand, is sort of like a schoolmaster looking around, making sure all the young guys know what the hell they're doing on a given play. The other thing that this defense needs to do is, like, all season long, teams have forced Kansas City into 3rd and long and then haven't stopped them. Like, 3rd and 19, whatever. Mahomes to Kelsey, first down. Like, it's absurd. They are picking up 3rd and longs at 45%.
It's insane.
Right, and that's so 7 and more, right? But they're like, that's nuts. That level, that percentage of converting on 3rd and long is madness. That's supposed to be a difficult situation. Like, that's your advantageous spot for a defense. We've got them in 3rd and long. We get to pin our ears back. We know the ball's going to come out pretty quickly, and they have to try and pick up a huge amount of yardage. So we're golden. Like, this is the perfect spot. And the Chiefs are just like, whatever. This is just a normal play.
Well, the Chiefs pick them up. What makes them so difficult in 3rd and long is they pick up those first downs in different ways, right? Yeah. It's Mahomes from the pocket, where guys are getting open or schemed open. It's Mahomes outside the pocket if you let him break free, either running or passing, right? He can do it multiple ways. He converted, that 3rd and 17 or 18 or whatever it was against Tennessee. So that's the other thing. If the Jags are going to rush 4, Sam, do you want to win reps here and there? Like, do you want to just have, I don't know what the balance is, right? Do you mush rush and say, don't get too far upfield, retrace your steps, don't let Mahomes break the pocket? Or do you say, we need splash plays? Every now and again, we need that 2-second win where we pick up a sack, strip sack or something like that. It's so tough when you rely on that 4-man rush. I think to coach your rushers to perform, to do it the right way against Mahomes.
I don't think you need the 2-second win, but I think that's where you need your athletes to show up. Like Jacksonville's defense, their pass rushers, they're not great, but because they've all been drafted high, they're almost all spectacular athletes. Like when you look at Trayvon Walker, the other Josh Allen, Arden Key, like these guys are special movement, speed, explosive type of players. They don't necessarily need to win in 2 seconds, but when Mahomes starts to break the pocket and starts to go somewhere, they need to be able to mirror and chase him down and make sure that he's not able to just escape and buy 3 more seconds for Kelsey to get open some weird way and then fire the ball in there. Cincinnati did a really good job of this when they played Kansas City, and they had like Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, who are 2 pretty good athletes themselves. Like Jacksonville can match those guys for athlete for athlete. They're not as good a player, but the great work that those 2 guys were doing was when Mahomes started to bail. Like they were able to stay under control, shadow him outside of the pocket and chase him down and force him to go somewhere with the ball quickly, as opposed to getting out of control, trying to win initially and then just being taken out of the play. So, guys like Trayvon Walker, it's like, look, you're not really getting a ton of pressure anyway. So concentrate less on that. Yeah. Concentrate more on making sure you're there when he starts to bail and then use your athletic ability.
It feels like a lifetime ago, but the last time we saw the Chiefs was the ring around the rosy huddle play against the Raiders. And on top of all this, right, Mahomes is special, and they've got, I think it's a good group of playmakers, the way they deploy them. Travis Kelce, of course, being the star there. A good offensive line. And then, oh, by the way, the creativity, right? There's just so much to defend, timely, because our friend Josh Norris just posted a video of all the different ways Kadarius Toney was deployed in the Jacksonville matchup last time. And we're talking orbit motion, jet motion, leaking out into the flat, and all these different things. And every time you give Andy Reid, the extra week, I think I haven't checked up on his recent bye record and all that stuff, but that was legendary for a while. Mm-hmm. Whether he's great coming off that or not, we've seen the Chiefs rusty coming out of byes. I'm less worried about that, but there's so much for the Jags to prepare for, right? And it looks like their defense has to just play a really clean game to win, and then who knows what the Chiefs do in the red zone, right? Like, what are they going to break out in the red zone right now? There's always some level of creativity there. Maybe they have a constraint play for the merry-go-round. You need a play off of that. We've only seen a speed option throwback screen coming off of that. What if they just want to run mesh coming off of that? You could run anything. You could. But right now, they have a strong tendency for every time you see the merry-go-round huddle,
Yeah.
you're going to see speed option throwback screen.
100%
So you're going to be like,
is.
alert, speed option, throwback screen. And then they're going to be like, nope, we're just running speed option here. So you don't know what the answer is going to be here with the Chiefs.
Yeah, 100% so far is a strong tendency.
Yeah, thank you. And our other friend, Andrew Siciliano, I'm just in tune with. Then I have a declaration to make.
Okay.
Sicily says, could get messy in Kansas City Saturday. Cloudy early with periods of light rain and snow later in the day.
Yeah.
It's on Twitter right now, but I'm also keeping an eye on the chat. And I see the people in the YouTube chat saying, don't forget, pick the opposite of Steve. But I have a declaration to make. My declaration is playoff Steve has arrived. I have arrived. Playoff Steve is 4-2.
Playoff Steve.
Playoff
is
Steve.
4-2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the NFC South. I had a bad year, but somehow I snuck into the playoffs. You're still letting me make picks, and here I am, 4-2.
Bringing your overall record to
It's a new season.
47 games
It's
under
a
500.
new season. A new season.
No, it's not.
What's your new season record?
Well,
I know
my
what it is.
total
It's 1
season
and 5
record is 21 games better than you,
in the playoffs.
which is still terrible.
In the January, Steve, even because it did start week 17 and 18. Kind of got into a roll.
It started
Hot.
once your son started making picks for you.
No,
Your
I went
7-year-old.
away from Harry. Harry's 2-4 in the playoffs, which is still a game better than your 1 and 5.
Oh yeah, I've been horrific in the playoffs. I've been, in fact, horrific since your son came into the equation and started to complicate
Keep my son
things.
out of this.
And well, you could have kept your son out of it, and then I'd have been fine.
Should have for your sake. Yeah.
So hang on, what was your declaration? The playoff Steve is a different animal. That's
Playoff Steve's arrived. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. I've declared that.
All right. So what
I'm
does
also gonna
playoff Steve
declare-
pick here?
I want to talk a little Jags offense first.
Okay.
But first, I want to remind people, as Meme Guy reminded us in his sleep, he's hearing, the PFF NFL podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow? Well, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance investment and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Maybe they have some cool huddle options in their playbook as well. You should go check it out. You can team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. You can get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. I wonder if they have like an Andy Reid playbook over there. All the answers, all the options, great red zone options all over at westernsouthern.com/PFF. Real quick, other side of the ball though, Trevor Lawrence probably needs to be special.
Yeah.
He hasn't put together a full game over the last 2 weeks, right? Must-win games. Good start against Tennessee. They kind of offense disappeared late. Against the Chargers, it was the opposite. Really slow start, and then they turned it on late. I think you need a full. It doesn't have to be special, but just a full good game from Trevor Lawrence. And sometimes we get caught up in the special, right? The great throw, the here, and the spectacular play, the highlight reel. I think the best thing Trevor Lawrence did last week was taking what was there defensively. Kept hitting passes underneath. They busted coverage. It goes over the top. He played a really clean game after he threw 4 interceptions, right? Didn't he? 3 of which were probably unlucky. But he played a really clean game, and he just took what was there, took what was there. I think he's got to handle some pressure from Kansas City, some tighter windows with the press coverage that they play, and take what's there. And if he does that's the Jags' best chance. I think the Chiefs are going to have some pass rush success, though, with Chris Jones in particular.
Yeah, I mean, the tough thing from his point of view is that you probably have to assume that you're starting from the standpoint of we need to hit 30 points to have any shot.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about all the ways it feels very difficult to imagine a world where the Chiefs don't put up that kind of total. So if you're going to have any kind of chance of springing this upset, you need to be able to match them with that kind of offensive production, which is possible, but doesn't give you an awful lot of margin for error. The Jags' offensive line has been weirdly good in pass protection this season. I think that takes a hit with Cam Robinson down and Walker Little, who was the subject of our Explain the Grade thing yesterday with him in there. But yeah, the main threat from Kansas City is right up the middle with Chris Jones, who is having, a Defensive Player of the Year caliber season. That guy has been a wrecking machine almost all the way through the season. The fact that he can then kick out and do it on the edge as well is also terrifying for an offensive line. Like, he's definitely going to bring some pressure.
All right, the one last thing here. The Jags and Doug Peterson will play to win, right? It sounds like a ridiculous cliche statement, but they will be aggressive on 4th downs, and they'll go for it when people are asking you to take the points and take the 3. You don't take the points against the Chiefs. You play for 6. You play for your 6.5. I hope you hit the extra point. So we know we'll get that aspect of it, right? We know we'll get some level of underdog aggressiveness from Doug Peterson. I think he was actually a little conservative in the last Chiefs game, a couple punts right around midfield, but they were like 4th and 3s, 4th and 4 type of. If you get into 4th and 1, 4th or 2, I think they're go for it anytime you're on your own 40 or beyond. So that'll be the other interesting thing to watch for the Jags. If they're going to pull the upset, they at least have those elements in their favor. They're going to be aggressive and give it a shot. So I hope we see a good game, man. I hope we see a good one here. But the Chiefs are a better team. They won by 10 the first time out. They're favored by 8.5. Where are you going with this one?
And this could also be it's been happening the second half of the season and the second half of last week, et cetera. But this could be like Trevor Lawrence's real coming out party. Like if he goes toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes and a better Kansas City team in the playoffs, even if he doesn't pull the upset, if he gets close, this could be the game that everyone's like, all right, Trevor Lawrence is absolutely legit now.
Let's do narrative stuff, though, because I like this with the playoffs, right? Patrick Mahomes has played in an AFC championship every single year he's been the starter. He has never played a real road playoff game. Don't tell me the Tampa Super Bowl. That's not it just coincidentally happened to be against the Bucs in Tampa. It's not really a road playoff game.
Kinda is.
It's not, because the season ticket holders don't get all the tickets. It's not a road playoff game.
I mean, it's not at home, and it's on the road.
It's a neutral site.
At a site that
it's a
happened to be
neutral
the
site.
team.
It was predetermined, neutral site.
Right, but it ended up being...
He's going to have a neutral site AFC championship if the Chiefs and Bills win.
At the very minimum, it's road adjacent. It's right there.
It's not an official road game. He's never played an official road game. He still won't.
Okay.
It's still not going to happen. They're the number 1 seed. My point is they've been in the AFC championship every single year. The Mahomes-Reed Chiefs legacy is getting up there with the Patriots, but they're just behind in Super Bowls, right? They're the team that's in the AFC championship every single year. They're the team to knock off, even though the Bengals did it last year. The Chiefs are the team to beat. They're back as the number 1 seed. And then you have the upstart Jaguars, where there's the 3 definitive top quarterbacks, probably in the NFL, but definitely in the AFC, and Mahomes, Burrow, and Allen. And Trevor Lawrence wants to join that group, right? He wants to be a part of that group. And then you've got Trevor Lawrence living in Mark Brunell's shadow, because in '96, Brunell went into Denver and he pulled the upset against Elway as 12.5-point dogs. And they went to the AFC Championship, got waxed by New England. But either way, they went to the AFC Championship in a year that they shouldn't have. And the Jags are trying to repeat history here with Trevor Lawrence, trying to be the next Mark Brunell. I mean, Lawrence is trying to be he's jockeying for position to be the second best quarterback in Jags history.
Who is that right now?
David Garrard.
David Garrard.
Yeah. Trevor Lawrence is trying to put himself
ahead of David
Garrard to be QB2 behind Mark Brunell in franchise history. That's what's on the line here this weekend.
Stakes don't get higher than that.
I got the Chiefs covering the 8.5.
Yeah. This is the one, I think, from the week that I feel the most confident about. So obviously it'll be the other way. Trevor Lawrence wins. I just
1 in 5 Sam. 1 in 5 playoff Sam.
Yeah.
Feeling real confident
You're
about this.
really mouthy for a guy that was literally the statistically worst game picker that the game has ever seen.
I'm the Jags. I snuck into the playoffs and then, I won a game.
Yeah. No, you're like Tom Brady trash talking, Dallas before last week. Like, what are you? I'm Tom Brady. I'm the greatest the game has ever seen. I'm going to go out and stomp you and on my way to the next Super Bowl.
Except he's got a way better track record than I do.
Yeah. I mean, look, we just outlined all the ways that Kansas City's offense is still going to put up a ton of points. And then it's like, can Jacksonville hang with that? I don't know, but it doesn't feel that likely.
All right, Giants and Eagles are up next. But first, the NFL playoff action. Of course, it's continuing. We're previewing it right here. We're one step closer to Super Bowl 57. And for the NFL Divisional Round, check out DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. Plus, all new and existing customers can take a shot at an even bigger payout with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Boost your NFL winnings with each leg you add up to 100%. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code PFF. New customers can bet $5 on the NFL Divisional Round and get $200 in free bets instantly. This is a no-brainer, by the way, because, again, I'm seeing the people that are winning here. There's money to be had. It's only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the code PFF. You get your $5 bet, 200 in free bets come back instantly. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, man, Saturday night, another rematch. Giants at Eagles. NFC East divisional battle. It's the first time in NFL history, I believe, right? 3 out of 4 teams in the divisional round are from the same division. 2 years removed from the NFC East being the saddest division in football.
Yeah, I mean, Philadelphia can make it to the Super Bowl without leaving the division.
It's incredible. It really is.
Which I guess, that would be pretty impressive.
So the Eagles are favored by 7.5. You said I'm getting mouthy.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants are getting mouthy. Giants fans are getting mouthy. They're getting
Giants
mouthy.
fans, yeah.
So look, if I'm going to play the Brunel game and relive my teenage years, let's play the Giants narrative games. Okay. Is it 2007?
Is it 2007?
All over again.
No.
You've got a fourth-year quarterback, right?
Yeah.
Fourth-year quarterback. Remember Eli Manning back at the time? Wasn't even that good. Didn't even have good years, 04, 05, or 06. Even in 07, wasn't even that good. You're a wild card team. You're on the road the entire time. And you just keep winning. And then they go and defeat.
Have people been making this comparison?
No, I'm making it right now.
Because actually, there's way more parallels for this one than there is for the Brock Purdy as Tom Brady people.
Oh, I thought you were going to compare it to the Jags, because the Jags comparison's true, right? Because in '96, the Jags were 4-7 and made the playoffs.
Yeah.
This Jags team was 3-7 and made the playoffs.
I can promise you that.
But the Giants in 07, there are some comparisons here. Year 4 quarterback who really hadn't done a whole lot to that point, making a Super Bowl run.
Yeah.
Earning his place in Canton even.
You can make a case that Eli Manning doesn't get the next contract without that run, which is exactly the situation that Daniel Jones is in right now, where they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Daniel Jones would not have got that contract, if he's going to get one, without this run.
Let me give Daniel Jones some credit here.
Okay.
Right? When you go back and you look at the Eli Manning scouting report, there's a lot of like touchy-feely. He's going to work hard and he's going to be the face of a franchise. And even if he's not as good as Peyton, he handles adversity and all that stuff. And you heard the same stuff when Dave Gettleman was drafting Daniel Jones, right?
Was there stuff?
Wears khakis.
I hope there was stuff in the scouting report that read exactly like that. Look, even if he's not as good as Peyton, there's a lot of stuff in there.
He's no Peyton Manning, but he's pretty good. No, every second brother at some point gets he's better than his brother. He's better than his older brother. Every single younger sibling.
Nobody ever said that about Eli.
Yes.
No.
At some point.
At no point in his life has
because he's
anybody
got a
ever
little
said
better
he was better than
arm.
Peyton.
Absolutely. Like when he was going to Ole Miss, you could dig up something that's like he's more talented than Peyton.
Not a chance.
It's that whole, I think I saw Marcus Spears is doing it on Twitter, like Patrick Mahomes is more talented than Tom Brady. And people are like, no, Brady's got more rings. And they're like all debating. And it's like, what is talent? Right, so somebody somewhere along the way said Eli Manning is more talented than Peyton Manning, which doesn't matter because the goal is to play quarterback better, not to be more talented, whatever that is.
Nobody in the history of the world ever said that, including everybody within the Manning family.
This might be pre-Google. We might not be able to find it. So that's the story.
Daniel Jones is Eli.
This is his chance.
Okay.
To be Eli.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. As well as Daniel Jones and the offense played last week, it's impossible to divorce that from just how bad the Minnesota defense is, which is the worst defense in the NFL judged by yards and points, and those kinds of things. Okay, if you go by EPA per play and stuff, it's a little bit better than that, but it's still garbage. So this week, they're going up against the Philadelphia defense, which is just better across the board. They'll bring more pressure up front. They have better players in the back end. They run more diverse schemes in the middle. Like they have the ability to cause dramatically more problems for you than Minnesota did. So immediately, it should be a much more difficult job for that Giants offense.
All right, you want the you've been rooting for funny.
Yeah,
you like to root for
always.
funny. I have a funny scenario.
Okay.
The Giants and Cowboys win.
Giants and Cowboys win.
Cowboys are now hosting the NFC Championship.
Yes.
Now, I don't know because you're big into billionaires thought process and all that stuff.
Because I just from that, I have a hilarious way of that game ending.
The sun.
Yes.
Yeah. So the sun.
Now, the problem is I don't know what that looks like in January because
I don't know. I don't know. We never get to see January football, January football.
Maybe that was the whole point. Maybe at that point the sun is in the opposite direction.
No,
it never goes onto the field.
In winter, the sun's low. Right? The sun's low.
But it also it pivots. Like it's off angle. Like the same way that the Manhattan hedge thing.
Let's just picture the sun's in the right place.
Okay.
Michael Gallup's. I'm looking at our lights right now. I could see what this.
Right.
I'm already seeing spots. This could be
The winning
difficult.
touchdown is
the
about
winning
to land.
touchdown's in Michael Gallup's hands, and he loses it in the lights, which are very aesthetically pleasing for Jerry Jones.
Yep.
He loses it in the lights, and Daniel Jones and the Giants are off to the Super Bowl.
That would be hilarious.
There's what you're rooting for.
Absolutely.
It has to be the Giants winning, though, because that's the only way Dallas can host the NFC Championship.
Yes. Okay, I'm up for that.
So that would be a 5 versus 6 seed NFC Championship. Back to the game.
Yeah.
I do believe we overreact to Wild Card Weekend quite a bit.
Okay.
And you forget the teams that are on the bye are really good.
Well, the other thing is this is a weird game for a few reasons. Like it's another one of those third-time matchup deals, right?
Yep.
Which are always weird because they have such a bad record. It's very hard to beat a team in the NFL 3 times, right? Blah, blah, blah. But I think generally that's simply because it's difficult to put together 3 winning games in a row, particularly against teams that are in the playoffs, because by definition those are good teams. I got the stats though. You want to hear them?
Yeah, I do.
Because I know you hate these. Tom Bliss from NFL Football Ops gave me the data because I was too lazy to look it up myself.
What do you mean
I asked, he gave it to me.
You emailed him?
No, I asked on Twitter because I was too lazy to look it up, and people answered.
And he responded to you. Look at you. Like
Since
you AP voter, all of a sudden you get whatever you want here.
Since realignment, so 2002, with the introduction of the Houston Texans as a franchise, the third matchup between teams in the division has occurred 29 total times. The team looking for 3 wins has only achieved it 5 times. So 5 out of 29. What's that?
Hold on. Say it again.
5 out of 29.
Oh, 5 out of 29? Well, it's under 16.7%, so it's about 15-ish.
Okay. The matchup has happened 19 times in the wild card round, 7 times in the divisional round, and 4 times in the conference championship.
Last year.
Yes.
We saw that.
It's happened the 4 times. So of the 5 winners, it's happened 4 times in the wild card round and only once in the championship game. It's never happened in the divisional round. And by never, I mean since 2002.
What's the latest divisional round rematch?
I don't know.
We saw Bucks Saints a couple years ago. Was divisional round.
Okay.
There was one.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Uh-huh. So this is history the Giants are shooting for here.
So the Giants.
They're looking to become, or no, the Eagles, I guess.
The Eagles are looking
to become
for
the first team to knock off. No, the Giants are looking to become the first victor.
Oh, so the undefeated team is always one. No, because the Bucks.
No, you're right.
The
Nobody's
Bucks
shooting
lost
for history.
to the Saints.
Nobody's shooting for history because it's always happened. So anytime teams that are 2-0 versus their division rival,
the Eagles would buck
always
history here by being the first team to win a third time, but have it be in the divisional round, according to that number.
No.
Yeah, it just happened 2 years ago with the Bucks beat the Saints in the divisional round, after going 0-2 against them.
Okay.
In other words, the underdog keeps winning this.
Right.
For some reason.
Yes.
Only in the divisional round, though. Matters not in the conference championship. Last year, the Rams. No, the Rams bucked the trends too. They beat the Niners for the first time. This is bad. This is really bad.
Anyway, the point being,
quick distraction. Greg Roman stepped down as offensive coordinator for the Ravens.
Step down?
Yeah, he's stepping away, meaning at least half the league now. Byron Leftwich was officially fired since we talked about it yesterday.
Yeah.
Half the league needs an offensive coordinator.
Half the league.
Just about, give or take. 9 out of 32, 10 out of 32.
That's quite a lot less than 16 out of 32.
It's almost half.
Not really.
Sorry, I was trying to save
but
you.
My other point being, the reason this is so weird is not just because of the trying to beat the same team 3 times thing. It's because the second matchup between the two was Week 18, where the Eagles rushed back Jalen Hurts for no good reason because they were still technically trying to lock up the number 1 seed, even though the Giants weren't treating this game seriously and therefore they were almost certainly going to win.
Reps.
But because they rushed him back, in part, the Giants rested everybody of consequence, and the game was still really close. So that's just like a confusing data point for several different reasons. So now you're like, well, if the Giants' backups ran Philadelphia kind of close, doesn't that mean that their starters should make it a real game? You're like, well, okay, but if you go back to the first matchup, the Eagles just rolled. So what do you do with that?
I don't think you take much from the actual results in previous games, except for when you're trying to read stats off, right? It is interesting that the Giants' backups hung so tough against the Eagles, But Hurts was coming back off injury and was clearly rusty. That was also the last time we've seen Jalen Hurts. Presumably, though, he's healthier
Eagles,
now. And,
yeah, generally.
Right, the last time we saw them. But, I mean, that's a big part of it, right? Like, Hurts throws a red zone interception. I mean, he just didn't play very well. He was different in that game. I just want, like, the chat wants us to give proper credit to the Giants.
But proper credit involves the context of who they were playing.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, right? When someone says, "Oh, PFF hates my team," like, first off, obviously we don't. We can't hate all 32 teams equally, but we have to. We have to hate all 32 teams equally. We have to love them all equally. When we quote unquote hate a team, it's because there's probably some sort of underlying metric, right? Like, wins and losses aren't the best metric to predict future wins and losses. There are other things, like how well you played and all that stuff. And when you do exceed what you should win based off of underlying metrics that historically are really good at predicting wins and losses, you try to figure out why. And I think where you would want to give proper credit to the Giants is the coaching staff and Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka and everybody that's Wink Martindale and the high variance defense and luck. Luck is in there too.
You don't have to look any further than the Minnesota Vikings for why you don't just say, well, let's just give credit where it's due. The Vikings have won all these games. They got one of the best records in the NFL. Let's talk about them as a Super Bowl contender. It's like, yeah, but like they haven't, these wins have not been coming via a normal process. And this is why everybody all the way up to that game was sort of saying the Vikings are not in the same category as other dominant NFC record teams. They are a team that has been consistently kind of bucking the way this normally goes, and at some point that's going to catch up with them. Like the Giants, you need to come with the context of, yeah, they performed well on offense, but they did it against arguably the worst defense in the NFL. So of course they looked better on offense.
Yeah.
But that's just common sense.
I also do want to give proper credit to Daniel Jones, particularly in recent weeks, playing really well. The other thing, when you want to look back at previous matchups, like when the Eagles whooped the Giants 48-22, you didn't have any cornerback of note out there for the Giants. You've got guys like Nick McLeod playing corner for the Giants in that game in a Wink Martindale system that didn't stop blitzing, that was still trying to, trusted their corners one-on-one. Nick McLeod and Fabian Moreau taking most of the snaps in that game. You have Adoree Jackson back right now. Adoree played a great game last week. Didn't really match up directly with Justin Jefferson, but they played a different game plan, played it a little bit safer. Wink has blitzed the Eagles a ton. It's another one of those. Last week at this time we said, oh, he won't change. He did. Completely changed. Completely different game plan against the Vikings. What's the game plan against the Eagles? Because he Hurts, no quarterback in the NFL has seen more blitzes from the Giants this year than Jalen Hurts, because he played him twice, but he's seen 64. I forget the exact number, but 64 passing grade on those plays. And when you go back and watch them, it's Hurts does some good things. He misses some throws on them, but they're tighter windows, right? It's like high variance plays. If Jalen Hurts makes a great play, like you tip his cap and say you made a great play one-on-one. I wonder if the Giants are going to do that, or if they're going to make the Eagles play the patient game. That's scary because they can do everything, right? They can run it. They can throw short. They're going to run with Hurts. They got the good offensive line. I think it's a lot easier to say, Vikings, we're going to take away your big plays. We're going to take away Justin Jefferson. Be patient. But against the Eagles, they can carve you up because they have a lot of other answers.
So the idea of it's very difficult to beat the same team 3 times in a season, a lot of that, the narrative to that is always, well, once you've seen them 3 times or 2 times already, you get a great insight into what they do, tendencies. You understand what they're doing schematically. You can therefore adjust and beat them better the second time. Doesn't it feel like if that's going to help anybody, it actually helps the Eagles more than the Giants? Because the Giants are the team with the sort of weird coaching scheme on both sides of the ball. On defense, you've got the most blitz-happy team in the NFL by a distance. So by definition, you're not seeing a defense like this outside of New York, right? And then the other side of the ball, you've got Brian Daboll on that offense, which is consistently getting more than the sum of the parts and outperforming what the talent level says they should do. So if anybody's going to get more insight after 2 games, seeing the same team, it feels like Philadelphia is going to be further along to figuring out why this scheme works than the Giants are looking at Philadelphia's, which is just good.
I mentioned last week, right? Daniel Jones, number 20 all time in rushing yards in a season by a quarterback. Jalen Hurts is obviously in that mix as well. I mean, it's a different looking game as well because you have so much reliance on quarterback run game.
Vanilla Vic. That's what they were calling him.
They're calling him. Really?
You heard?
Don't go there.
I haven't called him that. I'm just saying some people are calling him that.
Some people are calling him that. Some people are calling him sneaky fast. Some people are, long strider, Daniel Jones. Long strider. Some people are calling him better than Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Like that one guy, Giants fan. Some people.
Lunatics.
But I want to give Daniel Jones credit. Like, he has played well. And I go back to those whole, like, the scouting report things and everything. I mean, he hasn't looked like the moment's too big for him and this and that. He's played pretty well. Not down the stretch when the Giants needed him. And the other thing is we've seen the emergence of the Giants receivers. Isaiah Hodgins has been fantastic this year. Travis Fulgham breakout for the ages type of deal, like out of nowhere. Hey, Isaiah Hodgins is a thing now. At what point do we start acknowledging that maybe the receivers aren't as bad as we thought because a guy like Hodgins has stepped up and Richie James has stepped up? But speaking generically here, this will come down to the red zone and those plays and all that stuff. The Giants have schemed it up in the red zone. They've always got some kind of trickeration. I think they're going to play the underdog role really well here as well. And maybe this is one of the changes in the NFL where for years when the best team, teams were favored by 8, 9, 10 points, the other team didn't always play underdog, right? They didn't always play that role. They didn't always go for the extra fourth downs. We saw the Giants last week as 3-point underdogs just say, this is how we play. I'm not taking the field goal. I'm going for 4th and 1. I'm taking the QB sneak when it's there. I'm not going to, just kick a field goal to take a lead because that's what you always do. The Giants are going to play this game the right way. Now, the Eagles are going to do it too, but it does make this matchup fascinating for maybe the Giants and their ability to try to keep it close.
Yeah, I mean, the big question is simply, does this Giants offense function the same way against a legit defense, not against the Minnesota Vikings or another comparable bad defense? So, yes, they've been on a nice run of improved play, of Daniel Jones looking great, of the offense doing some good work against bad defenses. Now they get to face Philadelphia, who has one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, arguably the best, who have legit corners on the back end, who have a good defense. So question number one for this game is, can they put up the kind of points or just have the kind of offensive success that they've been having in the last few weeks? Because if they don't, now all of a sudden you're asking, well, what can Wink Martindale's defense do against Jalen Hurts at the third time of asking?
The other matchup to watch here, we saw Dexter Lawrence absolutely wreck Minnesota in all aspects, particularly every time they drop back to pass. He did not play in the Week 18 game against the Eagles. He had pretty good success in the Week 14 game. Obviously, it didn't matter. The Eagles scored points. But that matchup with Jason Kelce is awesome.
It is. He has an absolute ton of pressure, specifically lined up at nose tackle. Like he lines up as a sort of true old school head up over the center nose tackle more than most defenders in the NFL do, but also he's ridiculously effective when he does. And it's particularly effective against guys like Garrett Bradbury, these undersized centers that in today's NFL, you're not used to dealing with those guys anymore because teams don't play that way. Like teams don't play with the old school two-gapping monster nose tackle who's playing head up over the center and weighs 350 pounds. Nobody has those anymore. Or if they do, they're lining them up like in gaps and they're playing the same way that everybody else plays defense. But the Giants actually line Dexter Lawrence up there and all of a sudden position him over a guy that he's outweighing by a ton, that he's stronger than, that he's longer than, and causing all kinds of problems. Now, Jason Kelce is the other end of the scale from Garrett Bradbury in terms of overall quality. He's arguably still the best center in the NFL. He's right up there with Creed Humphrey this year in terms of all-pro. But, A, he is undersized relative to the position, and B, he's always been weaker as a pass blocker than he is as a run blocker, particularly if you can isolate him in pass protection. So if he's not, helping with a guard, but he's actually trying to deal with a guy like Dexter Lawrence one-on-one. That is a weird area where you wouldn't think the Giants have an advantage, but I think they probably still do against what is the best offensive line in the NFL.
Do you want some really quick? Do you want some statistical malpractice? I'm gonna bring to the table here.
Statistical malpractice.
Since week 13,
Yeah.
it's an arbitrary cutoff, but it makes for a good point. Daniel Jones, number 2 quarterback in the league
By PFF grade?
by PFF grade,
Okay.
89.2,
Yeah.
dating back to week 13.
That is indeed.
Passer rating, rushing grade, everything's good.
Yeah.
So, and Jalen Hurts is only 15th.
Uh-huh.
So you could say, you could turn the tables here.
Where is he in yards and points over that time?
I don't have points, but yards, he's 12th.
Okay.
Yeah, but you don't.
You got to add rushing
That's
in
just
there
passing
as
yards.
well. Yeah.
That's just passing yards.
He's probably got like 1,000 rushing yards in that time.
Because he's
Vanilla Vic,
Vic.
some are saying.
Where is he? Where is he in yards? Oh, let's get quarterback. Let's get some non-running backs here. Number 1 in QB rushing yards, 334 since that time. Right ahead of Justin Fields. He's basically better than Justin Fields.
Yeah.
At running.
At running.
And better at passing than everybody but Joe Burrow. That's what Daniel Jones is. So, yeah, there's a reason why the Eagles are favored. The Giants are a great story. I will say if they play like last week, I know it's not the same circumstances. It is a similar defense, a better defense, similar style defense. If they play like last week, the Giants have a shot. I think they have a shot to keep it close, and it comes down to this whole you need some plays. But I keep coming back to the Eagles being the best all-around team in the league. They can rush the passer. The addition of former Giant James Bradbury has been unbelievable for that secondary. Him, Slay, the linebackers, TJ Edwards, they've played well this season. And then offensively, they can run, they can pass, and they adjust. They win, or they play whatever style they need to win, right? We've seen weeks this year where A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith had almost every single target. We've seen weeks where Dallas Goedert is the guy. Weeks where Jalen Hurts has run the ball 18 times because that's what was there. Other times where they have their running backs and they rely on their offensive line. The Eagles have answers for everything. And the times where they've lost, one time with Hurts under center, they've turned it over, right? They've made bad decisions. They've fumbled it, whatever it is. If the Eagles play their brand of football, they should win this game.
Yeah, I think that's true. What was I going to say? The other significant, I think, change is the Eagles should have Lane Johnson back at right tackle. He's been dealing with some kind of hip adductor injury or something like that. He missed the last couple of games of the regular season. You could see the difference when he wasn't in there, and when Jack Driscoll had to man right tackle, it gave them a legit weak link on that offensive line for teams to target. If he's back out there and if he's anything like 100%, again, Philadelphia has the number 1 offensive line in the NFL and a line that's very unusual because it has no weaknesses. All 5 guys are at the very minimum average starters, if not better. And that doesn't give the Giants defense much room to get joy.
So that's what will also be interesting about Wink Martindale's decision to blitz versus last week. I feel like it was half, take advantage of the Vikings offensive line, and then half, do I trust Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, and then Kayvon Thibodeau, right?
And this
do I trust those guys to just win and I can rush 4 rather than blitzing? I don't know that you can trust those guys against the Eagles, but maybe he still will.
And Johnson being back potentially allows them to give help elsewhere to guys like Jason Kelce, who might find themselves otherwise one-on-one with Dexter Lawrence. Like Lane Johnson gets less help than any offensive tackle in the NFL. He's sort of the offensive line equivalent of Revis Island, right? They just leave him one-on-one with his guy, and then they can move everything else in the opposite direction. So if they're now able to dedicate extra help to the inside, all of a sudden maybe Dexter Lawrence doesn't wreck shop against Jason Kelce, who he outweighs by an absolute ton. So Lane Johnson being back doesn't just necessarily help because he can win one-on-one with his guy, but it potentially also helps the other guys.
All right, man. It's a Saturday night game. Eagles favored by 7.5. Do you want my pick first?
Sure.
I'll take the Eagles.
Damn it.
I'm taking the favorites.
Yeah, so am I.
I think we've both gone out of our way to paint a picture of how the underdogs can make these games, but I'm going to go by my I'm going to go with my standard of don't overreact to Wild Card Weekend. I'm not going to overreact to the Giants and Jags hype. Although, there's one more funny thing you can root for.
Mm-hmm.
Another Josh Allen game.
Another Josh Allen game.
Jags Bills AFC.
Oh, Josh Allen game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another Josh Allen versus Josh Allen game where Josh Allen sacks Josh Allen and everybody gets mad. Austin Gale gets really mad about those tweets, but everybody tweets it. Josh Allen forces a fumble on Josh Allen to go to the Super Bowl or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not as funny as losing the ball in Jerry's son.
Not even close.
But just something to keep an eye on. We're almost to Sunday's games.
Sweet.
But first, I want to tell you about the easiest and most fun way to spice up this playoff football season. It's Underdog Fantasy and their Pick'em game. Just look for your favorite or least favorite player stats. Pick whether you think they'll end up with a higher or lower total than that number in this week's game, and you can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Underdog keeps it super simple with their easy-to-use website and mobile apps. Pick between 2 and 5 players for your Pick'em entry. Get all your picks right, and you'll take home some cold, hard cash. It's simple to get started. Just head to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the app. Sign up with promo code PFF. And Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100. It's Underdog Fantasy, promo code PFF. Get in on the action today.
You need to give a little wave to the camera. My friend's young baby, Ava, is watching you. Likes your jersey.
Oh, Ava, hi.
I will give you...
Go 90s Jags.
I'll give you $10 right now if you can correctly spell Ava.
Ava. It sounds like an E, so it's probably like A-I-G-H-A or something like that. A-I-V-A?
No. E, father, A, B-H-A. No V in it.
B?
B-H.
B-H.
Makes a V sound in Irish.
So I had some...
I mean, you had the right logic.
I had some, consonants that shouldn't go together to make a different sound.
Right.
We're in the ballpark.
Yeah. Close.
Ava. It's EVA, by the way. Not EPA.
No,
EVA.
not EPA.
That's Ava. Mm-hmm. All right, we're on to Sunday. Bills hosting the Cincinnati Bengals. 3 o'clock. It is it should be the best game of the weekend. It looked like it was going to be one of the games of the season. Bengals at the Bills. Bills are favored by 5.5. Now, that Monday night game, the Damar Hamlin game, of course, the Bills were favored by 1. Basically a pick'em.
On the road.
On the road in Cincinnati. So, the general rule, you give 2.5, 3 points to the home team. This is saying that the market's moved a little bit closer to the Bills than it was just a couple weeks ago, just in week 17, right? The market's moved a little bit closer to the Bills. Both teams coming off of games where they didn't cover, right? They didn't dominate the Dolphins and Ravens, respectively. So it doesn't feel as good, but we still know these are 2 of the 3 best teams in the AFC.
Yeah, although potentially, if you dial down the impact of home field advantage, which I think is happening for betting lines, certainly now, but for a while, I think that, the line has actually moved a reasonable chunk. Because, so if it's 1.5.
Toward the Bills?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was 1.5, right? It would have been Cincinnati by a half point last time, and then 1.5. Now it's Buffalo by 4. So it's quite a lot, and it's gone through significant number in doing that.
I wonder how much of this is just the Bengals' offensive line.
I mean, it has to be basically all of it, right? They've lost 3 starters in 3 weeks.
We always talk about how much one player moves the spread, and it's really the quarterback, right? The quarterback has this number attached to them. The best quarterbacks, it's like 7 or 8, right? If you lose Patrick Mahomes and you have to play Chad Henne, you're losing 7 points right off the top before anything else happens. And any non-quarterback can barely move the needle. Like even Mike Williams and the Chargers and all that stuff barely moves the needle. How much would Von Miller, if he was healthy, move the needle when you combine it with the offensive line, right? The Bills don't have that, obviously. So I'm sorry. But you've got still a pretty good defensive line that can create pressure. And as I tried to say on the show the other day, the offensive line doesn't show up maybe every single play, but key runs, getting into 2nd and long if you miss a block, and then when it does get into 3rd and long, just not giving Joe Burrow enough time. We've seen Cincinnati overcome it to a point, as in they won games, but it was not a very effective offense last year on their Super Bowl run, right? They had those rough games, including the divisional round against the Titans, where Burrow got sacked 9 times.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we saw last season that they are capable of overcoming a bad offensive line. Now, you can argue now that this line might even be worse than it was last season, but it's a lot of the same guys. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Last season showed that it's definitely capable of overcoming that. but it makes everything so much harder. Like now Joe Burrow has to think about that pretty much every single play. They need to get the ball out of their hands quickly. It limits what they can do. It just makes it more difficult. On the other hand, though, Buffalo has not had the kind of pass rush that they had earlier in the season when Von Miller was there. When he was there, they had arguably the number one pass rush in the NFL. I think they were certainly earlier in the season, but I think it might have been until he went down, they were the number one team in the league in pressure rate. They were either 1 or 2 in terms of the lowest blitz rate in the league. They essentially relied on front four to get pressure, and they were getting pressure as much as anybody. Since he went down, both of those things have changed. They have been getting progressively less pressure, and they've had to increase the amount they blitz to try and offset that, and still hasn't done it.
Yeah, so I mean it's obviously going to be a major storyline. I think a lot of times we see the pass rush that is struggling. The antidote is a bad offensive line on the other side. So will Buffalo get pressure there? How will Joe Burrow handle pressure? But I mean, it's really, let's oversimplify this. It's Burrow versus Allen, man. It's I know they're not playing heads up. People hate when you do that. Heads up, quarterback versus quarterback. Who's going to play better in this game, given their circumstances? Josh Allen has been dealing with these turnovers or turnover-worthy plays all season. He's overcome them because he makes an incredible number of big-time throws. Last week, showing 7 big-time throws versus 3 turnover-worthy plays. You don't get much, crazier than that. At some point, you don't want him to throw the ball to the defense. Like, you don't need to have one to have the other, right? Some of the plays he's made, they weren't just aggressive plays. It's just like you just didn't see a linebacker. So don't do that. And then from a Burrow standpoint, so much of his greatness is, tight window throws. He's got, one of the highest completion percentages in tight window throws. And there's so many plays where you talked about the Chiefs, right? They get backed up. It's 3rd and long. The Bengals have a slew of these plays too, where it's like, oh, you got him to 3rd and 10. Well, Burrow's going to hit this. He's just going to hit an index card on Jamar Chase's hands in the end zone for a touchdown, or along the sideline for a first down. Those are fine margins, and I think that's what we're looking at in this game. Will Burrow make those tight window throws? Will Allen make those turnover-worthy plays that he's shown a lot of the season here?
The other thing that was key, sort of last year's run with the bad offensive line, Joe Burrow had one of the best seasons in the NFL under pressure, and that's one of the things that you have to commend the Bengals front office for in the offseason, was recognizing, and the Chargers did this as well when Justin Herbert had his first year, was recognizing that is a really volatile, unstable metric, and you simply can't rely on a quarterback being superhuman against pressure every single year. So the only answer to that is make sure he's under less pressure and try and equalize the swings. So Cincinnati obviously went out and overhauled that offensive line, but the chances are Joe Burrow will not be as good under pressure as he was during that run. But is that offset by the fact that the Bills don't have the pass rush that they had earlier in the season? I ran the numbers and checked it out. Since Von Miller went down, Buffalo is actually below average in pressure rate. They're at 30% as opposed to the Eagles, who were at 44.5 over that same period of time, leading the NFL. And the blitz rate for Buffalo has gone up 10 percentage points. They've gone from like 12% blitz rate to 22. So they're blitzing more often, and they're getting significantly less pressure. Basically, they have a much more inept pass rush than they did when Von Miller was there, which is huge for Cincinnati because they have 3 backups on the offensive line.
Which could completely look different this week because of Cincinnati. It might look different for Buffalo here. The little that we did get to see of that game, Joe Burrow looked great, man. I mean, he was the Bengals had some quick answers. I mean, Buffalo's defense in general, they've never been pure lockdown under Sean McDermott, but on the higher end, they're on the better end of defenses across the league, certainly. But from a pass game perspective, they just kind of, prevented big plays and did a really nice job of making life difficult for opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah,
it's a little more hit or miss now.
It's funny, though, how much the perception on Cincinnati has changed, in part because of that game.
Which game?
The DeMar Hamlin game that got abandoned.
Yeah.
And obviously part of it is also that they've lost 3 offensive linemen in 3 weeks, which completely changes one unit, which is a pretty important one, right? But if you look at what their run-in has been, look at the teams that they've faced and beaten with that one game that got abandoned. But where since, middle of the season, they beat Pittsburgh on the road, they beat Tennessee on the road. Okay, those maybe aren't quite as impressive as they could have been, but then they beat Kansas City, they beat Cleveland comfortably, they beat the Bucs on the road, they beat the Patriots on the road. That game against Buffalo gets abandoned, but at the point it did, they were looking really good.
They were ready for the big game. They were ready for that stage.
Right, and then they beat Baltimore back-to-back, in two reasonably close games, or one reasonably close game and one game that was against Anthony Brown. But if you put that game sort of back in the schedule and it actually ends up going the way it had for 18 plays, which is, meaningless. But like if that continued through and you add a victory against Buffalo to that, you would be saying Cincinnati's the best team in the NFL. Like this is the team to fear. Forget Kansas City with their 1 seed. Like the Bengals are it. But you take that game out of it, all of a sudden the NFL and their infinite wisdom drops them down to the 3 seed. They have to go on the road to Buffalo. And in the course of since that, they've lost these 3 starters. And now you're like, man, all of a sudden we're like 5.5-point dogs, and they're not seen I don't think in the same category.
Yeah, I mean, we highlighted that on the show a ton, like that stretch. Did you? I forget which game you started with, but even like the Titans game in Week 12 felt big at the time. I mean, they went through a huge stretch of some tough teams. Not every team was tough there, but like they didn't lose. They haven't lost since was it Week 8 when they laid an egg against the Browns. Mm-hmm. And that's the point I wanted to make too. Like Zach Taylor as head coach, because we're short-sighted too. I think we focus on, did he go for the 4th down the right way? Is he running the ball too much? Remember, like early Zach Taylor analysis was they're running too much and they're doing this and that. I think what I've most been impressed with Zach Taylor about as head coach is he's evolved when needed. Right? There was a point last season where they handed the reins to Joe Burrow and said, "Hey, go win games. Go throw for 450 yards and be our guy. We're not going to only drop back 25 times and try to win with the run game." They've lost some tough games under Zach Taylor and the Bengals. Everybody loses, but they always bounce back. I've been so impressed with how they've bounced back from just from sleepwalking through games that they should win. The Jets 2 years ago, Browns this year. And then the third one is in big games. The Bengals seem to bring their best in big games, even in the Super Bowl last year, right? Like you couldn't ask for much better than what they brought to the table. It's just Aaron Donald was too good, right? The Rams were too good. Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford were too good. So I think we're going to see the Bengals' best, is what I'm saying, in this game in Buffalo.
Well, Burrow's never lost in January, right? Isn't that a thing? Like dating back to like all of his career.
And Trevor Lawrence we forgot the Trevor Lawrence stat.
What's that?
He's never lost on Saturday.
Never lost on Saturday.
Ever.
Yeah.
Like dating back to birth.
Right. Back to birth.
Yeah. High school Saturday, because they usually play on Friday.
Yeah.
I'm sure he had a Saturday game in there.
Did he?
In college, he only lost on Mondays.
Yeah.
National championship. And then last week.
Yeah.
Last 2 weeks.
I mean, I think the same idea with Joe Burrow. He's never lost in January.
Listen,
back to birth.
So if you trust the stats here, the Giants are going to win, because the divisional round team that has lost the 2 always wins.
You trust the statistical malpractice.
You have to trust the statistical malpractice here. Giants are going to win, plus Daniel Jones, better quarterback since week 13. Jaguars are going to win because Trevor Lawrence never lost on a Saturday. Mahomes probably has a losing record on Saturday, going back to Texas Tech. Think about that.
That's true.
Right? And you've got Joe Burrow's never lost in January.
Yeah.
I can't wait till we have a stat for Niners Cowboys that's going to determine the game.
Brock Purdy. There's definitely a stat for
Brock Purdy's never lost in the NFL, so that's
true.
Pretty,
he's undefeated.
It's pretty straightforward
right.
here. That will never happen.
He just doesn't lose in the NFL.
Him and Jeff Saturday are kind of like the same guy, except when Jeff Saturday was 1-0, he lost the rest of his games. When Purdy was 1-0, he won the rest of his games.
Yeah,
same guy.
Saturdays wasn't the Raiders game wasn't on a Saturday, right? Because that would have been perfect if he'd only won on Saturday and then couldn't win on Sundays.
Trevor Lawrence owns Saturday, not Jeff.
Well,
we know this.
No, that was
this is why people tune in for
that was his second game, right? Because that was it. He was 1-0, and then he was going. Then the next game was.
Then it was like Saturday on Saturday against the Vikings.
Yes, no, because the Vikings game was Thanksgiving, wasn't it?
No. That was the Saturday afternoon.
Okay.
I was Elf
on
that
what?
day. It was Saturday.
You were?
Yeah, I was Elf. I was dressed up as Elf.
Just a random Saturday game.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a Christmas party. I was dressed up as Elf watching the game. That's what I remember. It wasn't Thanksgiving. I didn't dress up as Elf on Thanksgiving.
That would have been silly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Ryan Nelson says 2 state championship games played on Saturday in high school. Trevor Lawrence won both.
Okay.
Mr. Saturday. The real Mr. Saturday.
Yeah.
So. That's all I got. I mean, we don't have much else to add here.
Well, so the thing that you were bigging up Zach Taylor. The thing that I think is most impressive about him is that this offense has become an awful lot less predictable.
Yeah.
Like last season, the biggest issue was they just telegraphed what they were going to do by alignment, by, you know, how the personnel groups. Like everything about this offense was formulaic, and teams understood how to combat it. And that's why so much of last season was predicated simply on Burrow to Jamar Chase, because teams understood what they were doing, and generally they were able to combat it. But at some point, the excellence of two superstar players is just going to invalidate whatever defense you're dialing up, right? This season, they become a lot less predictable, and so everything else can function as well. It isn't just relying on Burrow and Chase being better than you. They can actually beat you with scheme as well.
Von Miller's still number 2 on the Bills in total pressures this year.
Really?
He hasn't played since, week 10 or 11, whatever it might
12,
be.
I think.
So you still need, so I agree with you on the Bengals, right? Like even last week, it was Jamar Chase short passes instead of just outside vertical down the field stuff. They have answers to problems now. So I think that's part. So my point in all of that is I think the Bengals are going to bring their best. The Bills' best is still probably better than the Bengals, right? Because slightly, I mean, we're splitting hairs here. But Josh Allen's best, and this is like when I ranked him just above Joe Burrow in the playoffs, Josh Allen's best is probably the best in the league.
Yeah.
Of anybody.
But they're now in this really weird, they have this tightrope to walk between, we've seen in the past that when Josh Allen takes over games, and in the playoffs, when he takes over games, and there are things he does that you simply can't combat. Like he can neutralize anything you want to do, because at some point he's just a better athlete. He's stronger, bigger, faster, whatever. Like you can have everything dialed up perfectly. You can have the correct answer in terms of defensive play call, and then he's just going to jump over 2 players and get a first down anyway. You're like, well, what? Like there's nothing you can do about that. But if that's sort of like, if you position it as like that's how Buffalo wins. When he does that, you can't stop it, and therefore they win the game. The flip side of that coin is what happened last week, and I know they won that game, but to what extent is like, well, this is all Josh Allen has to do this. And when Josh Allen has to do this, either he's unstoppable or you get plays where it's like, dude, just dial it back and settle down a little bit. Like, you don't need to do it all every play, you know? So last week with
but
this...
it's like a net win over time, right?
Yeah, but
it's still a net win.
But it also, in any given moment, exposes you to big mistakes, which can change the outcome of the game, right? So last week with this 17-yard average depth of target, like, is he going to come into this game still in that mode, like YOLOing it deep down the field for 20 yards per pop, like going, I need to do all this on my own. I'm carrying this offense on my shoulders. It's me to Diggs. To hell with everything else. Or are they going to come out with a little bit more like poise and let's just run an offense and see where we get to?
Yeah, it is unbelievable, that style of play last week. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it.
I mean,
that level of aggression at all times of the game, even in the fourth quarter when leading, didn't matter. That
looked like what would happen if you gave Ryan Fitzpatrick all of the physical tools in the world and just said, go play. Yes. Like, what would that look like? It would look like last week Josh Allen.
But my point is, it's a net win. And you know what? Here's the deal. Here's why that might work again this week. Do you trust the Bengals corners? Like all season, injuries, Chidobe Awuzie being hurt, and everything that they've had to deal with back there, I think they've made do, right? And they do a great job scheming it up. They do a great job adjusting in the second half. They have been able to make teams one-dimensional in certain games where DJ Reader's nonstop.
Second half adjustments are a myth. Peyton Manning said so.
Yeah, I heard that. That's true. I mean, yeah. But, yeah.
I think it's probably true for Peyton Manning. Like, Peyton Manning adjusted on the fly every snap.
But, like, I heard Kurt Warner be like, well, we did stuff. And like,
right, that's what I'm saying. Like,
everybody...
But think of the way Peyton Manning played the game. Like, his entire game was about adjustments snap to snap. Like, it's I'm doing this, now you're doing this, I'm going to combat it, audible, Omaha. Like, he was adjusting every single snap of the game. There are other players who are out there doing the more paint-by-numbers quarterback. Those guys will be adjusting at halftime.
But the point is, and then all the other players, Jeff Schwartz, he was like, that's my experience. But like everybody was basically saying the same thing, which was A, teams adjusted all times during the game. You're not like, man, that was a tough drive. We'll talk about it at halftime, though. Yeah, we got the rest of the first and second quarter here, but we'll just wait till halftime, right? And the whole point he's trying to make is you don't wait till halftime, and you don't literally like draw new plays at halftime. That's what he's trying to say.
Right. But I would imagine that of anybody, Peyton Manning is going to be doing the least halftime adjusting of any player in human history.
Yeah, because his whole thing was having an answer to whatever's on the field. I get it. But there is something about like you've seen X number of things, and once you see X number of things, you know how to adjust, to X.
Yeah.
And the Bengals do a really good job of that. Okay. Maybe they adjust at halftime. Maybe they start in the second quarter. Maybe it's the middle of the third, but they do adjust. How can the Bengals with Cam Taylor-Britt, Eli Apple, who just got whooped last week, and these guys have all been battling injuries too off and on. Cam Taylor-Britt, Eli Apple, how are these guys going to hang with Bills receivers? I mean, for my point is Allen might want to play the same game as last week. DJ Reader, immovable object in the middle. You're probably not going to get much joy, as you would say, in the run game if you're the Bills. Like, it's all stacking up for another Josh Allen superhuman effort, or at least attempting that, which is, we're going to trust our receivers to win. I'm going to chuck it to them, and anytime we need a third down conversion, if it's short, I'm running maybe. If it's long, I might be running. I mean, Josh Allen's making the plays. Because I don't think you're relying on Devin Singletary and James Cook a ton in this game.
No, I mean, so the other element, because all the attention is on Cincinnati's offensive line and the fact that they're down to bare bones and a bunch of backups and how that's going to go against Buffalo's pass rush, I think we're kind of skating over the exact opposite scenario, which is Cincinnati's defensive line is pretty good and Buffalo's offensive line is not. And that's kind of being ignored in this whole matchup. Like, the Bengals are able to bring multiple impact problem players to the table that I don't think Buffalo has anybody capable of blocking. Like, can they block Trey Hendrickson one-on-one on the outside? No. Can they block DJ Reader one-on-one on the inside? Well, nobody else has. Like, they have some real issue players that the Bills' offensive line, which has not been good this year, I don't think is tremendously well set up to stop.
I mean, I think it's not being we mention it every week, right? Because we view the Bills, I mean, all of these teams as like, here are the juggernauts. What are the weaknesses that could come back to bite at some point? And we mentioned the Bills' offensive line all the way back to week 1. But it hasn't yet, right? The offense hasn't been less effective. It's only been less effective, not necessarily because Allen's under pressure. I guess last week it was. He was under pressure and fumbled. But it's not because he's like, under duress or anything like that. It's just, Josh made a bad decision. I don't think the offensive line's held him down this year. They've been fine. And it's the same offensive line. Can the Bengals have some success against them, rushing the passer, stopping the run? Absolutely.
Well, this is the weird thing about Allen is that he's got a very, very strange statistical profile this season where he's the number 1 graded quarterback under pressure and has been all year. Like, is he still posting? At one point, he had a passer rating higher and over 100 when he was under pressure versus when he was not under pressure. Now, it's down to 94 now for the entire season, which is still absurd. But the number 1 graded quarterback in the NFL under pressure. But his grading falls off a cliff when you force him beyond his first read. So those two things don't mesh normally, right? Like, generally speaking, when you force a quarterback off his first read, a lot of his numbers are going to go down, in part because you're going to be under pressure a lot more in those situations, and quarterbacks play worse under pressure. What's happening here is if you can force Josh Allen off his first read, but have him still comfortable and under pressure, that's when he's making a ton of mistakes. But actually, as soon as he's really under pressure, somehow he zones back in and makes an insane running play or fires a bullet to somebody and makes a good play. It's weird.
That's Josh Allen, man.
Weird.
I can't wait for this game. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be, I think we'll get the whole Josh Allen experience. You're going to get the Joe Cool Burrow experience where he's not as maniacal, but he has some of those plays in there too where he just decides he's going to run around and extend plays and see what happens. You've got Jamar Chase and Stephon Diggs, incredible playmakers on both sides. I think the offenses are both going to have success. And what are we still looking at? 30 degrees. And where's Siciliano? Cecilia, you listening to the show here? Drop some weather for me here. I just want something in the teens with some wind.
Okay.
I want some snowflakes.
Well, so I got good and bad news for you. Some of which doesn't seem to coincide together. It's 37 degrees apparently.
Weak.
3 mile-an-hour winds and snow.
Oh, I see some snow there.
Don't you need how surely, what temperatures does it need to get to before there's snow?
So that's a high, right? You're looking at the high.
I'm just looking at the number that it puts in front of me. It doesn't say high or low. It just says the number.
The number that you see is the high.
Okay.
The default is the high. So presumably, there'll be temperatures lower than that.
Okay.
Cloudy, snow showers developing in the afternoon, which is when this game's being played. High near 35. 5 to 10 mile an hour winds. Chance of snow, 60%. Snow accumulations less than 1 inch. Yeah, that's kind of weak. That's weak. So we might get a little aesthetically pleasing snowflakes, but that's about it. That's it. All right, man. 5.5 points for Buffalo. Where are you going?
I'm going to lean Cincinnati, even though I hate.
As I'm typing it in.
Even though I hate their
We're going to
offensive
agree.
line.
We're going to agree to
It's
all,
looking that
on
way.
all these.
It's disturbing.
Remember, if the Bills and Chiefs win, we don't get to have. There'll certainly be no snow for the AFC Championship.
Because it'll be in the Dome.
It's going to be in Atlanta, in the Dome, where nobody can buy Chick-fil-A, and we don't get an outdoor AFC Championship.
Why Atlanta? Was it just because?
Because every other Midwest, Northeast Dome failed. Detroit's busy.
Failed?
They're doing new turf, and Indy's got like probably some.
Right, but forget the Dome. Why outside somewhere?
They wanted a dome.
To hell with the Dome.
The NFL wanted a dome. They're like, oh, here's a great opportunity to not have a weather game, to not have people slipping down, to have the quarterbacks throw for 400 yards apiece. And by the way, it's going to be Allen versus Mahomes in the dome if they play it. Allen versus Mahomes in the dome. Oh, this is great. We're going to have a 50-47 game now.
Right, because we saw last year those two get really hampered by bad weather.
I mean, it wasn't that bad weather. It was
It's
just,
freezing ass cold.
so what? The cold's fine. All right, last game. Dallas Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers. The mid-90s are back. I also love that last year these two teams played in Dallas last time.
Yep, the Deebo Samuel taking over game.
I was firing up the 92 NFC Championship earlier today.
90, okay.
Dallas beat the Niners in San Francisco to go to the Super Bowl. I was watching that in the background a little bit. Steve Young struggling with turnovers here in the 92 playoffs. But he got the monkey off his back. They did it. Remember, they removed it after the 94 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But 3.5 points. The Niners are favored here.
Dallas was signed a kicker to the practice squad.
Are they going to elevate him?
I don't know.
The yips, I don't even want to. Let's not spend too much time on the yips.
It definitely can't be helping Brett Maher's confidence, you know? By the way, there's now a guy waiting in the wings. You know, just in case you shank one during practice this week. You're out of here.
How do you, oh man. How do you deal with the yips? I've had teammates that had the yips throwing.
Yeah.
And one of my college teammates, he would grab a bucket of balls and just try to throw it, say, like, from me to the wall. And he would, like, throw one at the freeway or something, you know, just miss it. And it, like, he was really trying to, like, hit the wall, and he would overthrow the wall at our stadium, which was, like, 15 feet high.
Right.
And he was, like, hitting cars. And this was, like, before practice, just so we could play a game of catch.
Yeah.
It's bad. I also wonder, does it not affect 50-yarders? Is it only because that middle ground – it's almost like defending the Chiefs with 16 seconds or 13 seconds or whatever, where you don't want to give up a touchdown, but you don't want to let them get in field goal range. And you're like halfway in between. This new extra point is like, it's a 32-yarder. You know?
I feel like
it's not the 50-yarder where you're just letting it go.
I've used this. Different analogy, same movie. But Tin Cup developed the yips at one point in the movie. I don't know if you remember or not.
I do,
right?
yeah.
And his solution to this was to wire him up with like 17 different forms of like swing gimmickry. And then he was like, well, now you're thinking about all these things.
Think about all the other stuff.
Yeah.
So that's a common Hollywood solution, because I don't know if you're familiar with the Major League series, but in Major League 2, the young catcher had trouble throwing the ball back to the pitcher, and he would recite the likes and dislikes of the Playmate of the Month. And he'd be thinking about that, and before you know, he's throwing the pitcher.
You just got to stop thinking about your swing and your mechanics.
So Brett Maha, we've got answers, man.
Maha.
Huh?
Maha. I'm just saying, the solution somehow is to get him to stop thinking about his kicking mechanics. I don't know how you do that.
And there it is, everyone. The longest time we've ever spent talking about kickers on the show. How about the real football players, Sam?
Wow.
Talk about what?
Wow.
The rest of the football players. Sorry.
That's not what you said.
The rest of the football players. Now we got a lot of discourse in the YouTube chat about the Chargers being the worst Super Bowl team of all time.
Okay.
Here's some perspective. I did stop watching that Super Bowl at halftime in order to play NBA Live 95 for Sega Genesis.
It was a pretty bad beatdown.
Yeah. But the most excitement I had that day was NBA Live 95 came out for Genesis. It was incredible. So we played that during the whole second half.
Okay.
And boy, that game was good. Very good. It's a very good game. I was excited. First time I got to play that game.
Uh-huh.
All right, Niners and Cowboys. It's time to talk about the game. Closing in on 2 hours again.
Yeah.
What are you looking for in this one? Cowboys coming off an incredible wild card win, but of course the Niners were as well.
Well, yeah, this is the game where it feels like you keep talking about the overreactions to wild card weekend. This is the game that feels like it's most impacted by that because now the assumption is Dallas is back. You know, the Dallas team from last week is the one we're going to get. And if that team plays San Francisco, now you got a real barn burner. You got two really good defenses that can force turnovers and cause problems. And you got two offenses that are going to put up a ton of points and score and make spectacular things happen. It's going to be great. But yeah, but what if that Dallas offense doesn't show up? Like, because it didn't for a while before that.
I've said for a while, I think Dallas's best is really good, right? Their high end is really, really good. And that was the other night, right? You get an effective offense. They scored 5 touchdowns. They have a run game when they don't give it to Zeke that's effective. They have Dak making good decisions. They've got receivers and tight ends who can get open. They've got a good scheme. Defensively, they can rush the passer. Most of their coverage players are pretty good, but they can put together a full effort defensively. If they bring that to the table, this is a really good game, man. It's a really good game. And if you look at the Brock Purdy 49ers, have they been challenged at this level yet?
No.
Not at this level, right? I mean, they not even with winning teams that they've beaten. And it sounds like, because we have to talk about Brock Purdy every week, it sounds like I'm just like waiting to tear him down. But it's fair to say, okay, is this the week, right? Is this the week where it's a little more difficult? He had some jitters last week. He bounced back. He didn't play the greatest game. But that's like the beauty of the Niners system, right? When the quarterback doesn't even play his greatest game, we're still going to score touchdowns. The quarterback's actually going to throw for 3 and rush for another one. But if he plays at the same level this week, is it different against Dallas because this pass rush and just the defense generally is far better than Seattle's?
I mean, I'm just trying to run through numbers quickly and look at like what the best defense Brock Purdy has actually faced from a number of different angles. Certainly in terms of EPA per play, he hasn't faced a top 10 defense yet, I don't think.
Maybe the Bucs, but like the Bucs defense is weird because once they ran into any good offense like the Chiefs or the Niners, they got rolled.
Right. I think it's actually Washington is probably statistically the best defense he's played. If you look at passer rating against, like the passer rating each team has given up, he hasn't faced a good defense at all. Washington is the best one there at 18th. Pressure rate as a defense, by far the best one he's going to have faced he will face is this Dallas team. Like nobody else is anywhere near. Again, Washington at 11th. So at the very minimum, we are kicking up in a pretty significant way the defense that he's going to be facing. Like he's going to have gone from borderline top 10 defenses in a couple of different ways to one that is legitimately one of the best in the NFL, certainly at high leverage problem situations, pressure rate, turnovers, those kinds of things. Now, does that make any difference against Kyle Shanahan and his wizardry, or is that actually going to cause some problems?
And Bobby Slowick.
I
mean, so I mentioned last week, right? If you're identifying a weakness on Dallas, it's like, all right, Trayvon Diggs is their best corner. He's their best playmaker. He'll give up some yards and all that stuff. But if you're choosing who you want to attack, it's everyone else. Jaron Kearse played in the slot the other night. They've had Deron Bland play outside and in the slot, but that other cornerback has been the weakness. Shanahan isn't the scheme that's like just attack this corner, but they have all of these playmakers, right? They have their answers to whatever you throw at them. So again, that's where it's like you have confidence in Shanahan and his offense because he's called plays well. Purdy has executed. And then, by the way, you got to cover Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. Every week we just list all these guys. So this is just going to be completely different for Dallas's defense this week, where they're not facing the now fired offensive coordinator Byron Leftwich, an aging Tom Brady. They're facing the Niners, who are going to figure out a way to get some open receivers here.
Yeah, they obviously. We talked about them facing in the playoffs last year. That was a pretty quiet game from Micah Parsons. But then the 49ers were able to keep him off the line of scrimmage for most of that game. Like, that was one of those games where he was lined up as a true linebacker, not as an edge rusher, which isn't really the case this year. How Micah Parsons does as a full-time edge rusher deployed against Trent Williams and the rest of that offensive line, I think will be pretty interesting.
Saying people are, Parsons doesn't have many sacks the final 6 games of the season, but yeah, it's not about just the sack totals. It's being all over the place and creating havoc and creating pressure. Dallas still has that. Purdy against pressure, man. I mean, that's going to be a big one too. It's not going to be necessarily a blitz-heavy attack from the Cowboys. It's not about blitz recognition. It's about those one-on-one matchups up front. It's going to be awesome. But we've got a lot of the debate with the Defensive Player of the Year. We get this Nick Bosa versus Micah Parsons matchup as well. Whoever wins should just get Defensive Player of the Year, right? Get your vote.
Yeah.
Should get your vote.
Vote's already in.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anything?
It's a regular season award only.
Has anyone attacked you on anything? Has anyone suspected anything?
Suspected?
Yeah. You the one guy?
Oh, I think that's known.
Did you get attacked for that?
I mean, I put my ballot out there, so if anyone looked at the PFF how I voted,
okay,
it's there.
There's a lot of times it's like, who did the Bobby Wagner thing? Who did this one thing? Like, who voted for Devin White for All-Pro?
Nick Wright had this thing after the All-Pro votes came out where he ranted that there are votes that are bad enough that somebody should automatically lose their vote next year, right? I actually think that's a true statement, but I think...
But somebody would use that against you.
Yes, so that's the thing, right? So he was arguing Mahomes was 49 votes for first-team All-Pro and one that didn't. Right? So one guy had somebody else other than Mahomes as a first-team All-Pro. And he was like, that vote is bad enough that person should be like, okay, you don't vote next year. And I would be that guy for Nick Bosa, right? 49 guys had Nick Bosa as first-team All-Pro, and I didn't because, to me, there's 3 first-team edge rushers that are at that quality, and somebody had to miss out. And when you look through all the various data points, it's almost impossible to split those guys. And the only way you actually found to split them was difficulty of assignment and those kinds of things where Parsons and Myles Garrett both look better than Nick Bosa does, right? Essentially arguing that when you look through the actual assignments based off, is he being blocked by a tight end or a running back? Does that tackle have help? Who was the tackle he went up against? All those kinds of things. When you do that, Nick Bosa looks slightly worse than the other 2 guys, and therefore his production is actually being inflated by those things, right? So to me, I think you can make the case. Anyway, my point being, I think it's way easier to justify the argument of the one vote that doesn't vote for a dude that 49 other people did than the one guy that thinks that Jonah Williams was an All-Pro. To me, that's the one vote that needs to be asked some questions.
So it's not the one who didn't vote the 50. It's
correct.
It's
the one guy that voted somebody absolutely insane as an All-Pro because some guy thinks that Jonah Williams, who led the league and gave up 12 sacks, was the best left tackle in the NFL this year. That guy needs to have some questions asked about him.
Name names. We got
I don't know who it was.
Let's go back to Niners offense and Cowboys defense here really quick.
Sure.
Christian McCaffrey, we've got last year with the Rams, the story was the Rams went all in. They went all in. Got Von Miller, gave up 2 day 2 picks for Von Miller, half a year of Von Miller. Let's play that storyline a little bit here for the Niners. They've given up a ton of draft capital for Christian McCaffrey. And so far, the offense has been spectacular with Christian McCaffrey and Brock Purdy. We've got confounding variables here.
Shocker.
2 changes. How much of this is a McCaffrey game against those Dallas linebackers? Leighton Vander Esch. Can they keep up? Anthony Barr, get Anthony Barr in space?
It's been a pretty big bounce back year for Leighton Vander Esch.
Has been.
Like he's had such a weird career. He started off, looked like the best linebacker in the draft class, was really good right away, and then absolutely nosedive, dealt with injuries as well. And now it's kind of bounced back to being a really important part of that defense again.
Him and Tremaine Edmonds, 2 guys, they were our 2 favorite guys to debate that year because they were young. Well, one was young.
One was young in one was young
Yeah.
in age terms. The other one was young in playing time terms,
Right.
and it was
We're
a
like,
fascinating case
who has
study.
more upside, right? Who's going to be better?
And even now, like however many years later, it's like I don't actually know the answer to that.
Still
question.
don't have the answer.
Right.
But they're still playing. They're in the final 8 here, divisional round, and they're still playing. And they're both having their best years in a while. At least Vander Esch was his rookie year. But that matchup, right? All of the Debo's in the backfield. He's out wide. We talked about on the review show there were plays where Debo's the running back and McCaffrey's the receiver, and the defense has to just match up, right? And I want to give Dan Quinn a ton of credit for what he's done with this defense, right? He coming from the Seattle scheme where they didn't change a whole lot, and he didn't change a whole lot in Atlanta. He has changed his scheme over the last year and a half plus, almost 2 years now. Played to Micah Parsons' strengths, played to his team's strengths. The biggest thing they're going to do this weekend, I think, is just lining up. Not blowing a gap, not leaving a 68-yard run on the table for McCaffrey like the Seahawks did. Lining up and letting your playmakers play. I mean, it's the only way to maybe handle this Niners offense.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers offense is so difficult to stop just because they will stress you every single play simply from an alignment point of view. Like, Debo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle are all in the huddle. A, what personnel group do you even line up with? Like, what are you combating that with? Yeah. And then B, where the hell are they about to line up? Because it could be anywhere. Any of those guys pretty much could line up pretty much anywhere on the offensive formation, and you need to be able to adjust to that within your defensive play call. Like, that's not easy, and you've got to do it, by the way, in like 15 seconds. That's every time they line up. Like, Dan Orlovsky had this big thing of after the Miami Dolphins mess up on 4th and 1 where they couldn't get the play call in, right? He had this big thing sort of showing what a play call looked like, right? And how
I have a take on that. Go ahead.
Okay. Basically, that calling a play within 40 seconds is not that easy. Like, there's a lot that goes into it, more than you think. When you actually game it out and all the steps involved, it's like a minor miracle to get this done every single play. I would simply make that point that on the defensive side, this is happening as well, right? You have a very short period of time to figure out who's in the huddle, who are we going to match up that with personnel-wise, and how are they going to deploy, and how are we going to match that within a defensive play call that we're working from, and get all that figured out and aligned before they snap the ball.
Yeah. There's a lot to it, man. It does, the way you said it, stresses the defense from an alignment standpoint and all that. My only thing on the Orlovsky thing, I think on his point on 4th and 1, where they thought it was first down, and then like that's a challenge. What I always find funny is when like somebody goes on TV and just reads a football play, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible!" It's like, yeah, but like it's just everybody knows that language. Like it's not that incredible. Yeah. It's literally the job.
The point
to call the play.
Yeah.
Your job is to call the play. It's difficult for the viewer at home to call a play. It actually shouldn't be difficult for an offensive coordinator to call a play in time. The 4th and 1 thing is different. They had the whole fourth quarter was a mess for the Dolphins.
The thing I think that he is trying to convey, which I think is a good point, is like when you're sitting on your couch and all you're doing is waiting for the next play to start. 40 seconds is an age, right?
Sure.
When you're actually playing the game, it's amazing how quickly the play clock sneaks up on you, and it's like, oh crap, we got 5 seconds left to snap this. Let's go. Like, I've been in offensive huddles before where, because, at certain levels, I think the ref will sort of give you a shout, 10 seconds, that kind of thing, right? It's like, holy crap, we're already at 10 in the play clock.
Yeah.
Right, we got to get this thing snapped now. That, I think, is the part that is a good point to sort of try and convey to people that haven't been in a huddle, is how quickly 40 seconds can disappear after a play when, maybe some people are celebrating. You've got to move the whole thing. You've got to get the play call. Like, there's a lot that goes into 40 seconds that you're not doing when you're just watching from the couch, right?
No, I get it. I get that, right? I made that point earlier this year, too, when I was talking about Nathaniel Hackett, right, who'd been calling plays forever. And it was like, well, now you have to call plays and manage the game.
Right.
It's fast. It is a fast game. And you want to get to the line so you can see the defense and understand what's happening there as well. So I get that point. But, there's a lot going on that side of the ball. On the other side of the ball, a very good Niners defense going up against a very good Cowboys offense. It looks like Jason Peters is not going to be able to play at left tackle. I assume that puts Tyler Smith back at left tackle. Tyron Smith staying at right tackle. Connor McGovern comes in at guard.
Yes. Are they getting Biadasz back?
Biadasz is back again. Yeah, he was there the other night. So he's at center.
Right.
McGovern will come into guard. But that's another thing. The Dallas has been working with this offensive line reshuffle the entire last few weeks of the season.
Yeah.
It felt like that was a big part of their inconsistency, especially running the ball. They have not been as effective running it, but they were good running it with Tony Pollard the other night. It's been really bad with Zeke.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the story for years now. Like the
Not
disparity.
at this level, though.
It kind of has.
This looks like Zeke looks like Arizona Cardinals Emmitt Smith right now.
The disparity, though, between Pollard's numbers and Zeke's numbers over the last couple of years is insane. Like, it's madness that they are still operating under any kind of equal split.
Yeah, you should get more Tony Pollard involved. To be fair, a lot of the Zeke stuff is in the red zone as well. But even then, it's like, does that really matter?
Well, also, not only does...
Only tight. I mean, like, the 1 or 2 yard line. But,
not only
you got
like
stuff didn't get you that touchdown the other day.
That's the thing. Like, not only does that really matter, but the other thing is, like, should that even be the case? Like, if this guy is this ineffective running the ball in general circumstance, why are we giving him the short yardage stuff over Tony Pollard? Like, shouldn't we actually just say maybe Pollard would be better at that as well?
One question I have for Dallas, whether you have Maha or new kicker or whatever it is.
Stop saying Maha.
What's his name?
Maher.
That's Maha.
It's not. It really isn't.
Maha. Do you just go for 2 every single time?
Well, I mean, he's even going to be the kicker.
Yeah, but whoever you have was just on the street a week ago. You trust them for extra points.
We know, but if the kicker isn't Justin Tucker, the chances are he's equally interchangeable if you just dragged him off the couch.
I mean, the 33rd best kicker in the world, you still trust them kicking an extra point, presumably, right? But we've seen the strategy. The Steelers did this when they first moved the extra point back. They're like, we'll just go for 2 every time. They started this before that. They were like, it might be a better strategy to go for 2 over time. Does Dallas get into that world? Maybe.
I mean, only if the guy shows up and shanks the first 2 extra points. Like, I think you're probably going to give him that before you do anything. Since the start of the 2021 season, Zeke Elliott versus Tony Pollard. Zeke is averaging 3.9 yards per attempt. Tony's at 5.3. Zeke is averaging 2.7 yards per attempt after contact. Pollard is at 3.7. Pollard has 10 more explosive runs despite 50 fewer attempts. More than 50 fewer. Oh, God. A lot fewer. What do we got? 60.
Look at you,
150 fewer attempts.
On the fly. Maher.
Everything is a lot better. Everything. He's got double the number of broken tackles per attempt. It's night and day.
Yeah. Get the ball to your playmakers more often. CD Lamb. But one of the biggest plays in that Bucs game, I don't know how much you want to give Mike McCarthy credit, because they went for it on 4th and 3. Was that just because they couldn't kick? Right?
Probably.
Because it's funny, because he stumbled into the right play, right? He stumbled into the right answer. And the thing that happened there, I think they had 3rd and 2, and they got stuffed on 3rd and 2, and they went backwards. And I always talk about this. Like, if you lose yardage on 3rd down, are you less likely to go for it on 4th? The Cowboys went for it on 4th, presumably because they were like, we can't kick. We're not doing that. And they scored a touchdown on it, right? There's so many of these plays that are showing up in the playoffs. The Ravens only made it a game because they were aggressive on 4th down. The Giants won against the Vikings because they were aggressive on 4th down. If there's a Kyle Shanahan weakness, maybe he's not as aggressive in these situations.
Oh,
Mike
definitely.
McCarthy actually has maybe the advantage here. He's going to be more aggressive, and he's going to play the underdog role again. So it's at least 3 out of these 4 matchups, I think the team that's the underdog might also have the coach, not the coach advantage, but they have a coach who's going to play the underdog role and have a chance to pull that upset.
I think there is definitely an argument that Kyle Shanahan is too conservative in those situations. And I think it gets worse when he gets into the postseason. I think Shanahan has been scarred by previous, not even screw-ups, just previous bad results, previous bad outcomes in the postseason and in the biggest situations. Like that Super Bowl, 28-3, that's a scar that guy deals with during games. Like when things start to go south, that's repeating in his brain as he's calling plays, as he's deciding, do I go for it? Do I play conservative? Like, what do I do?
As does the guy on the other side calling defense against him, Dan Quinn.
Sure.
Another interesting matchup.
These 2 people just traumatized by 1 game.
Did you hear the Richard Sherman story with Kev Clark about how Kyle Shanahan basically just broke Dan Quinn's defense?
I mean, yeah.
He just broke the defenses.
Yeah, we saw that game take place. That was the Levine Toilolo up the sideline play, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just interesting hearing it from Sherman, who's like, Shanahan and Quinn were together for a couple of years. He's facing that defense every single time. And it's like, all right, when I face them again, I'm going to break it. I'm going to break their rules.
Yeah.
And he did. So that's going to be a fun little matchup here. Shanahan versus Dan Quinn. Like I said, Quinn's defense is not the same as what he was running back in Atlanta.
But it will be interesting to see if Shanahan has enough. Like, does he still have enough to break it?
Yeah.
You know, every now and again, not like every play, not what he did to the Seahawks, but but can he break it enough to put up some points? Now, I mean, again, they faced off in the playoffs last year, and it's not like they put up record-breaking numbers or anything. So
it's such a difficult thing to quantify. Going back to Shanahan again. I mean, a high level, it's like Shanahan offenses are good, but why, right? Like, why can't somebody replicate that? And the answers you always get are he calls plays with a purpose, right? He's building to something that's eventually going to break your defense, right? He's also processing all this information, right? He's like, if you play this thing one way, I have an answer for it. And that's why all the offensive coordinators that are getting fired across the league, a lot of them don't have that ability to call plays that build on each other. Joe Thomas calls it telling a story with your play calling. And so that whole side of the ball, Shanahan versus Quinn and everything, is going to just be awesome. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Can Dallas, really quick now, Dak, all the interceptions, everybody's talking about his 15 plays, his 15 interceptions this year. Don't even think he had a turnover-worthy play the other day. We did have a question about the Carlton Davis one in the end zone. He barely got his fingertips on the ball. I don't think he had a chance to intercept it. Dak played a really clean game the other night. Most of the interceptions themselves were very unlucky throughout the year. Dak has also had he's been on the lower end of turnover-worthy play percentage over the last couple of years. Not egregious, but what's going to happen from a turnover standpoint in this one? If Dak throws a couple interceptions, man, the narrative comes right back.
It does. And also, I mean, that's the game. Like, Dak can't have turnovers, I don't think, in this game, because there's no evidence that this 49ers offense is going to get slowed down enough that you have that kind of margin. So Dak needs to have another game like last week. He needs to have a clean game where he adds value, not detracts from it with a couple of mistakes.
Anything else you want to add in this game? What else are we looking for here? So if Tyler Smith moves to left tackle, you've got Nick Bosa going up against – Nick Bosa will flip sides a little bit.
Yep.
Nick Bosa going up against Tyler Smith, the rookie, played some left tackle, left guard, and right tackle Tyron Smith. That's interesting.
Yeah, and
because neither one's like Tyron should be on the left side, and Tyler Smith should probably have that one full year at guard before moving to tackle.
Right, and Nick Bosa has split time either side of the line, but he's also had games where he identifies which is easier and stays there. You know, and this feels like a game where you would quite quickly determine that you're better off going up against Tyler Smith than you are even a Tyron Smith playing right tackle.
Yeah,
like I would imagine if that's how it breaks down, Bosa spends almost his entire time against the rookie.
Charles Omenihu's number 2 on the team in pressures with 59. Really good season for him. He's long and difficult to block, just like Eric Armstead. Like, they just keep bringing in these, really difficult body types to block, plus freaks like Nick Bosa. So that's also a great matchup, right? San Francisco's defensive line against the Cowboys O-line.
We've also got the 49ers defense with D'Amico Ryans having like 78 interviews during the week. Kind of preparation to see
Quinn's interviewing too, though. Like both D'Amico Ryans and Dan Quinn are probably head coaches in this cycle.
Yeah,
or they're at least finalists. They're probably going to be head coaches, though. And again, the rule's different now. You used to not be able to talk to these coaches until after the playoffs, right? And now they interview in the middle of the playoffs. So I don't know if that is any kind of factor. Even game planning, though, it's like you have so many people helping you game plan. You have so many people helping you prepare for interviews, but having your attention pulled away from the game at all, I don't know if that's a factor here.
No. 49ers have used Jimmy Ward a lot as their slot guy now, which puts him on a collision course with CeeDee Lamb a lot.
Yeah.
Like CeeDee Lamb operates from the slot a lot. That doesn't feel like a matchup that goes particularly well for San Francisco.
I mean, CeeDee Lamb has the advantage pretty much over every slot corner.
Right.
But even prime Chris Harris, who is a pure corner playing in the slot, you don't trust too many slots against.
But for example,
but a former safety like Ward with slot skills like that, could be a challenge.
Like if you're, again, comparing it to last year, like I think the 49ers had K'Wan Williams as a slot corner last year, who's a much more natural and good slot corner than Ward is. So I don't think that went tremendously well for them either, just simply because CeeDee Lamb is good. But if you're looking for sort of mismatches in Dallas's favor, that's one potentially that you can see.
All right. So a couple things to finally discuss here. It's the Niners by 3.5. The game's at 6:30 on Sunday night. And we're going to make a little change here, too, because we're going to record right after.
Yeah.
Presumably. We're going to come in right after this game and recap the divisional round. So our Monday morning show, instead of waking up at 5:30 that day, Sam, we can stay up late Sunday night.
Yeah.
Right?
If you're listening, and if you listen as an audio form, it won't be any different for you, except it'll be up earlier.
Yeah, it'll be up earlier. You might get that at 5
If you watch, though, if you're one of the people that watch on YouTube, we're going to be live right after the games.
Right after the games. Tell your friends. Must-see TV on YouTube.
Which means the video will still be there when you wake up looking for your 7 a.m. show. It just won't be live.
But there'll be way more. You won't have a chance. If you wake up at 7 a.m. and you're like, I'm going to be the first thumbs up. I'm going to be the first like. Too late.
Yeah.
Too late.
It'll be already done then. But it'll still be there. You can see it.
Let's get to our picks. Niners by 3.5. You going Montana and Young or Aikman here?
Montana and Young, 49ers.
Wow, you're taking the Niners. My rule is to not overrate the wild card hype.
Right.
But both teams have incredible hype.
But doesn't it feel like that changed more for Dallas than San Francisco? Like we already knew San Francisco was really, really good.
Yeah,
Whereas
maybe.
Dallas, it was like Dallas looks ropey. Are they going to get taken down by a ropey Tampa Bay?
Nope, they're good. They're good again.
Then all of a sudden they're good again. It's like, oh, it changes everything.
I think I'm just going to keep betting against Purdy. I don't know. Like I trust Dak more than Purdy, despite all of that stuff. Give me Dallas. This is the one place where we differ here.
Perfect.
So you can gain a game here on Playoff Steve, who's 4-2 at the moment. Small sample, but it's all I have this year. It's all I have.
It really is.
In my draft model. Well, that's it. We kept it under 2 hours. Well done. For 4 games. I still feel like there's somebody going to be like, oh, you didn't talk about this. There's always a little something we didn't get to. But I think we did in this game. We appreciate everybody. Don't forget. So we're going to do Sunday night, like I said, on YouTube. So we won't be live on Monday morning. We're going to do it Sunday night instead. Audio will be exactly the same. Next week, we're going to go to 5 shows. We'll have that extra Tuesday show with you and Renner. I'll jump in on the Friday show. So we're just expanding the content, both from an audio standpoint. You'll get extra shows if you're listening, and extra shows on YouTube because that's what we're doing. More PFF NFL podcast show that we're doing.
And again, send us in emails if you have content suggestions, ideas, feedback, all of that kind of stuff. NFLpodcast@pff.com.
And you know me, like playoffs are fun and all that stuff, but the offseason's the real fun. Talking about it, right? So we're going to have a great time coming up here. So thanks to everybody for tuning in. Enjoy Divisional Round weekend, and we'll see you Sunday night right after the games.